The plane! The plane! The plane! That's the only thing I will always remember from this old TV series named Fantasy Island. So, well, as you can tell, out of sheer curiosity, I just went to see the latest. Okay, I'm proud, and I gotta talk to you about it. Yeah, another Blumhouse movie. Blumhouse Fantasy Island. Ah, man. We run into another Blumhouse run-of-the-mill movie. Ah, man. Blumhouse is always a gamble. Blumhouse is probably one of the worst movie makers there is, but at the same time it's the most intriguing. Because whenever you get a good movie out of Blumhouse Studios, it's probably kind of like 2 out of 10 or 1 out of 10. Or sometimes when they give you sometimes the worst of the worst is in ways the best thing you ever seen, because it's so stupid. Oh my god. So yeah, I already talked to you a lot about what are my thoughts about Blumhouse Studios. I mean, now they decided to tackle on this old TV series, Fantasy Island. If you ask me, I never watched any of the TV series of Fantasy Island, but for people who are a lot into pop culture, it is still something that I will remember, mostly out of the parodies that they made. Most notably is the one with Daffy Duck and Speedy Gonzales, having this parody of Fantasy Island. Or some Mexican, they did make also comedy sketches out of Fantasy Island. Sorry about that. The train is. I heard a train there. I don't know. Okay, so anyway, but I do have a little bit of the gist of what a Fantasy Island is. It was a television drama that is about this guy. One of them was in the early TV shows was played by Ricardo Montalban, and there is this little man named Tattoo who they announce, he announced every time when there's a plane coming to the island. He's like, the plane! So, yeah. But basically, it's kind of like an anthology where a couple of people go into this island. Ricardo Montalban is kind of like the host, and he tells them that this is an island where you go there, you spend kind of like, I think 3 nights, and then this island has the magical power to give you your most desired fantasies, and it goes a little bit into the be careful what you wish for territory, from what I heard. But since this is kind of like a TV drama, it doesn't go technically in the horror aspect, which it could easily be something from a horror perspective. And you know, the usual monkey paw in which you have to be careful what you wish for. But I gotta give the old TV series, and from what I heard there was also a revival, I kind of give it credit to make something that looks baitable for something horror related, but instead they just make it drama. But you leave that horror aspect to Blumhouse Studios. Oh man. I was still curious about it, and the funny thing is that the trailer, in my mind, I didn't thought that it was gonna be based on the TV series. I thought that it was gonna be something else called Fantasy Island, but still it felt so. I knew that the trailer looked so stupid. It was gonna be a stupid movie, and sometimes sometimes you just want to watch technically a stupid B movie and trying to criticize it for what it is. I would kind of like to, for the fun of it. Yeah, not everything has to be, you know, 1917 or Sonic the Hedgehog or Birds of Prey or something like that. as long as it doesn't insult your, insult your intelligence or something like that. And Blumhouse Studio has kind of like a 30% chance of insulting your intelligence many times. So there, I watch it cheaply on my nearest movie theater. Guys, if I had a fantasy of this movie, is that this movie will be rejected as one of the top 10 worst movies of the year. That is my ideal fantasy for this movie. This movie was god awful. I know that probably there's gonna be worse movies that there is. And there is. I still think the Turning and The Grudge were worse movies compared to Fantasy Island. But Blumhouse Studios is the typical Blumhouse bad movie that they got. And this is coming from the same guys who also created this garbage named Truth or Dare. Although at least on Truth or Dare, I'm gonna say that it's a lot of bullshit that I just applauded and unintentionally laughed. This one has kind of like the same vibe, but my god, if there's one thing about this movie that kind of kills it, is that this one has too many plots in the kitchen. It wants to be deep, but it has too much that we can't get invested. It wants to have character development, but it has a lot of douchiness that we can't handle. And then, and it feels like it's gonna be some kind of movie in the first act, but then at the second act, they kind of don't know how to end it, and they just begin to play Mad Lib, and they decide to stack things up that you were like, where did this come from? That is the initial reaction I will tell you. So it's been kind of like a week, so I don't mind spoiling a lot of this movie. But of course, I'm not gonna try to keep you here on hearing me rant about this movie. But I will give it but I don't hold any promises. So here it goes. I'm gonna talk to you about Fantasy Island 2020, the Blumhouse Studio, in which it took a TV series, a very old TV series that is about drama, and they decided to turn it into a horror film. PG horror film. Oh God, why did they insist in doing PG horror films? So first of all, the movie kind of acts like this is a prequel, in which it starts out, you know that if you see Fantasy Island, it always opens with a plane coming to the island, and then the little man named Tattoo, he goes to the host of the island, Mr. Rourke, and he goes, the plane is coming, and guess what? The little man is not there. Nope, it's not there. Then we see a woman just saying this, the plane. And of course, yes, this movie has Mr. Rourke. And this time, he is played by Michael Pena. I like Michael Pena just in case. And he welcomes a few hosts that won a contest. It's technically one blonde woman that I don't bother to remember the name, because it's there is two guys, one kind of like one American and one Asian, in which they kind of say that, hey, we're bros, guys. We may be from different ethnicity, but we're still bro, guys. No, seriously, that's what they do. They kind of begin to reestablish that, yeah, we're bros, guys, and it becomes kind of annoying. There's this another guy also who he wants to be a soldier, and then we got also Maggie Q playing a woman, one of those women. Without get to it. Basically, they go to the island, And like Michael Pena says, there are rules to the island. You're gonna be there, and you're gonna live out your fantasies. You can only have one fantasy at a time. And everything seems nice and simple, even though, but then things kind of get screwy when things, the movie kind of advances. First, let's go with the characters. There is this blonde girl who's kind of the movie expected her to become the main character, and in which her fantasy is that she wants to have revenge on a high school bully. And then we got the guy Solder, who he wants to live out the fantasy that he's gonna be drafted in the army, and then he's gonna live out the fantasy in which he's gonna try to save his father. Apparently, I forgot to mention that the island technically also has the powers to make people come back from the dead and or sometimes turn into your ideal being. There's also Maggie Q's arc in which she wants to relive a romance that she lost opportunity because she panicked and she rejected the guy that I think she loved or something like that. And then of course we got the other two yonkles, the Asian guy and the bro, in which their biggest fantasies is to have the biggest party ever. So yeah, all seems fine and dandy until, because they wanted to push it as a horror film, they come up with saying that all these things has a price. Like for example, the girl who wants to have revenge on the bully, she realizes that it's not that they actually kidnapped the bully in order to have her being tortured, and apparently she gets kind of like a change of heart when she realizes this is real. And I don't know, out of nowhere, I don't know what came into her mind. If I was living the fantasy, I wouldn't mind if it was real or not. It was like, wow, it's real. Hey, you know what? This is cool, especially since she's the one that put you through hell and ruined your life. And so don't give me that empathy bullshit, I'll say. Okay, maybe I'm sounding a little bit dark. But you know what? Empathy to someone doesn't come out, right like that or something like that. Well, what else there is? So at first, it's kind of hard to explain a lot about this movie because this movie is technically a scrambled mess, I'll say. But I do want to say a few positive things at least before I continue. First of all, I think many people say that Michael Pena was a little bit miscast on this movie, but I would say that he was at least one of the good highlights that this movie has. Michael Pena does everything he do with this as his role. He gives out his usual charming personality into this film, and he does well. Also, I think that the story arcs between the Soldier and Maggie Q are basically the closest thing to the original TV series, in which they have to live out kind of like a fantasy of something that they regret, and yeah, they come out with moments in which they kind of begin to doubt their fantasy and everything. So these were kind of like the closest things to make it kind of like a legit movie. But unfortunately, it is a little bit ruined when we get to see the other fantasy. Like the brothers was a little bit kind of like in the the typical teenage douchiness that you see in these kind of movies. They're like, hey bro, let's go bang this chick. Oh, you're gay? So here's Alejandro. Yeah, there's a really, really packed hot guy in this movie. So for all chicks, Don't ever come out and say that there's a lot of sexy women in the movies, making it harmful for harmful for kids or teenagers. You're always complaining saying that there's not enough hot guys. We do still have hot guys. Even guys have their sex appeal sometimes. Okay, I think I said too much. And then there's, like I was saying, there's also the subplot of this girl and the bully that she then rescues her from this big giant surgeon guy who he reminds me of Dr. Satan from House of 1000 Corpse. I think he's probably related. I think he was called Dr. Torture. They're being chased by Dr. Satan, and apparently the problem with that plot is that none of these two girls are likable. One of them she kind of tries to play the good girl, but then she begins to lie out of her ass about saying that, oh, I didn't do anything. And she rescued her, out of, how can I say, it's kind of like convenient pity out of it. And she rescued her in a way that I will say that it defies physics, I'll say. Here's the thing, guys. Here's physics 101, I think. If you have something electric, and then when electricity how can I say, is exposed to water, we know that the water conducts electricity, and it electrocutes anyone that is nearby the water. But here's the thing. I don't think that electricity chooses who to electrocute, because there is a moment in which basically there were two people close to the electricity, and then water spouts on two people, and it only electrocutes one guy instead of the other. If I'm wrong, please correct me, but I don't think that electricity kind of works that way. But then it kind of becomes a little bit of a mess when most of the subplots, they begin to mesh into each other. Then they begin enter another subplot in which we got this apparently this agent who was in the island, who was trying to find the secrets of the island, in which he kind of began to say that, yeah, things that happen there is real, and sometimes even the most deadly things that happens in the fantasy is still real. You can die. Here's the, you know what? I'll get to that later. About the plot elements. I'll get to that later. So the thing is that it has an interesting concept, I'll say, because I heard that the original TV series, it was mostly about lost romance, lost opportunities, and people that they just want to vent out their fantasies. But you know that sometimes your fantasy can get a little bit dark, of course. It was an interesting take, I'll say. I'm not complaining that they wanted to put kind of like a horror take to Fantasy Island. As long as you do kind of like a good job and don't end up like the Banana Splits movie. Okay. But the thing is that, like I said, Fantasy Island never dwelled, on darker fantasy, like revenge. And it was an interesting concept. Man. But still it had, all the traps to make a PG-13 movie. Like, again, it's bloodless, it's not scary, and it dwells a lot into orchestral strings and with ghosts just showing up for the sake of the audience getting scared instead for the character being scared. So we don't deal, we have kind of like no room to care for any of the characters much. And unfortunately, a lot of their backstories is told a lot by exposition. They explain a lot, and it's a movie that doesn't show, and it has to tell. And it's more apparent in the second half when the movie kind of begins to drop out a revenge plot from a bigger guy, someone bigger, who apparently is the one that said that, oh, my big fantasy is that I'm gonna kill all of you. I orchestrated everything. And it is only in the second half. And you know what? They begin to mention about a guy that was on an incident, and it is a little bit too late. And to make things worse, this guy is only mentioned. It never, ever appears in the movie. He only appears at least once, but some plot convenience. But only to show up that, oh, there's this actor. He's gonna have 5 seconds on screen. But this guy is almost never mentioned. Is never mentioned into the movie, even in the first half. Then they finally tell him they have a connection in this. Oh my God! And boy, that it feels out of nowhere. They began to play Mad Libs. Oh, and yeah, by the way, also then the bros are being attacked by apparently this Venezuelan cartel out of nowhere, which they kind of begin to wear masks. It's almost like they're the same robbers from the beginning of Batman: The Dark Knight. And one of the cartel leaders is this really phony ass Spanish accent Latino. I don't know if he's Latino, but it's kind of like an American playing a bad Latino characterization. So much that there was a scene in which he's beating in the yard, and he gives out the most deadpan ow and the most deadpan reaction to being bitten. He's like, ow, ow. That was kind of like the closest thing that I just laughed. It was the most. It's kind of like if you're bitten and you just wanted to keep on being on character, but still you just wanted to keep out your Spanish accent, your broken Spanish accent. It was kind of hilarious, I'll say. What else I can say about this movie? Oh yeah, one thing clear is that the movie always says that when there's a host and it tells you that you must obey the rules. Always obey the rules. Like they say that the fantasy has to go on. They just have to finish their fantasies. Of course, then the movie kind of loopholes itself, saying that, well, they can't finish their fantasy because, well, it's kind of like this giant loophole soup about it. Man, this movie is giving me a little bit of a loophole too. I think it's time for me to talk about a little bit of the plot elements to try to tell you about the chaotic second half that it has. Okay, first of all, again, I will say that the only plots that are actually kind of a little bit close to have some sense of emotion is of course Mr. Rourke's arc. He's of course played by Michael Pena again. Maggie Q's arc also was a little bit touching, I'll say. And also the soldier guy also was a little bit touching in one way or another. I just wish that these three plots were a little bit more complete, I'll say, but man, I'm just kind of being redundant on what I'm saying. But Well, yeah, it is later revealed that the essence of the fantasy island is that the island apparently has this core in which apparently it harnessed the guests the guests' fantasies and all these and it harnesses itself into this black water, and apparently the people who are constructed in there are basically kind of like black water zombies. That's the best I can describe out of it. So yeah, this whole catastrophe, it does end up with the death of at least one guy, in which he gets shot. And of course, because Blumhouse wants to keep it PG-13, it doesn't die of blood loss. It dies of black water loss. But now, here comes the thing. What happens is that the character Maggie Q, she feels kind of unsatisfied, but she says that she has this giant regret of an event that happened nearby her. And what happened is that she was involved in a fire which happened in an apartment, in which apparently it killed off that guy that almost never appears. He just kind of like mentioned, he never appears. And then it is kind of shown that all the guests that came into the house were involved, and they didn't kind of help the guy. She was kind of like the woman who just got out but had the opportunity to save him. The bros were just I think they were kind of drunk. I didn't see them clearly. And the soldier was actually a cop, but unfortunately he couldn't save the guy. So basically when everyone is reunited. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that the guy the agent dies halfway of the movie, and then he's almost never mentioned. He just only gets the water just to have a sample of the island, and then he disappeared, and it kind of turns into this canteen. What was it? This thermos bottle with fantasy island water. It kind of turns into a checkmouth gun. I think I pronounced it well, checkmouth gun. But okay, continuing on, they reunite and they begin to see that everything is part of the fantasy of one culprit. There's one culprit who orchestrated everything, and he was the original one that decided to bring them all together. And of course, they can't finish it until the fantasy dies. So, what is their solution? They have to go underground to find the source of the island and blow it up. Man. And by the way, Michael Pena, his character can't do anything. He just kind of acting like technically the good host, but he does say that, well, I am actually bound to the island because I'm also dreaming my fantasy in which I am living with my wife who she technically is dying. And yeah, by the way, remember that woman that says the plane? Yeah, that's the woman, and her importance doesn't appear right in the second half of the movie. It's almost like they kind of forgot about her in a way or another. Which leads me to the other problem that the movie has. And that is the running time. This movie is long. I think the movie started at 7:45 and then when I walked out it was 9:30. It's 2 hours very long, and the pacing is so long. Alright, so yeah, they go underground, they separate, and they go to the usual bullshit of the movie trying to scare you with really fake hallucination and all this stuff. And when they are reunited, they actually find out who the culprit is, and get ready. And you know what, I don't care if I'm gonna spoil it, because the movie is now out, and considering the audience that I just went, kind of nobody is going to see it. The culprit is none other than the girl who you thought is going to be the main character. What was the name of the actress? Yeah, the Lucy Hale. Yeah, you know the girl who wanted to have revenge under her bully? And then she get an epiphany and then wants to try to save the bully, and they kind of nonchalantly make up and all this stuff. Yeah, she was the culprit all along. Apparently because she was sore about everything that happened in her life. And guess what? The thing is that she blames the bully because, of course, the bully was terrible to her. In exposition, of course. In exposition. So she thinks her life is ruined, in which apparently the guy who got burned on that apartment, he was her boyfriend, and she thought that I'm gonna be saved, but then when the fire happened, none of you assholes saved this guy, so technically you guys ruined my life. So I was like, where did this come from? You haven't even established something for me to care, especially since you, with your subplot, is basically a subplot that is made out to make a character out of spoiled high school brats. Even there is a moment in which, before this agent dies, and when these two girls are kind of bickering, the guy kind of nails it when he just said, you girl, you acted like a queen bee, and you suck at it, so you gotta apologize to her. And you girl, grow the frick up and apologize to her because you keep on these useless memories, and you decide to pay back at her. Oh my god, and the guy was kind of right, but apparently they decided to toss it all around when she kind of becomes the bad guy. And then Michael Pena appears and he's like, well, I can do this. You know that the rules of the fantasy world, you have to follow the fantasies to the end. He even gets rid of, the grenade. And then he goes away, but then he gets kind of like an epiphany when he sees his dying wife, and he's like, okay, so like I said, there's only one. I have to still follow the rules, something. And they use the Technoff gun, which is drinking the water from the fantasy island and the only girl who didn't have a fantasy in the island is, of course, the bully girl, because technically she was kidnapped. And her fantasy is to bring the burned husband from the dead to pull out the bad girl. And then, of course, while she's drowning, she takes a grenade and throws it to almost kill everybody. But then this older guy, who also has an epiphany and knows what the true meaning of heroism, which I didn't bother to talk because or else it's gonna take so long. He just throws himself to sacrifice everyone by sacrificing himself, and well, he got the fantasy of dying a hero. And yeah, then the three survivors, they go to Michael Pena, and Michael Pena is like, well, there you go. You can leave the island with the next plane. And they were like, oh yeah, and how do you know that we're not gonna sue you for all this? Well, we'll get out of it because this is technically an island. And well, the Asian guy of course, he's very sad because remember that I said that one of the guys dies? Well, the one who died is his bro. But then Michael Pena is like, but you know what? I can revive your brother, but there's a condition. You have to live here. And the guy is like, you know what? Yeah, I'll do it. So the brothers revive, of course, and he becomes a co-pilot of the plane to lead, the other two characters, the survivors, which is the bully and the Mega Q. And then, Michael Pena is like, hey, so what's your name? You know what? I'm gonna get. My name is like that, but you know what? To make it a little bit more simple, why don't you call me the name that they always taught me in high school? And that is, and he reveals in his chest that he has in lines and he has written on his skin, tattoo. Yep, there's your tattoo. It's not a little man. He's an Asian guy in this movie. So there you go. There you have the prequel of Fantasy Island. And my God, this movie is a mess. It's totally a mess. It's not exactly as bad as The Turning or The Grudge. Because The Grudge was boring as hell. The Turning was unfinished. This one is typical Blumhouse Studio interference, in which it wants to do too much but accomplish too little. I cannot say that is 100% a horrible movie. It does have some merits. Again, like I said, Michael Pena, he does an okay job, and there were some plots that had some promise, but it didn't feel polished enough. And it's too long. It feels like it wanted to do so much, but accomplished so little. It got lost in the second half, and it turns out into a typical PG-13 horror wannabe, in which I'm not complaining that you can't do PG-13 horror. It can be done well, but you have to push it. I mean, just like last year's Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. I personally have my issues with that movie, but it does the horror aspect at least well enough to be a scary PG-13 horror. But Blumhouse Studios keeps doing that. So I can't recommend this movie. Sorry, I can't recommend it unless you want to check it out by sheer curiosity. That's the only way I can recommend you if you want to, waste a little bit of time to check out what Blumhouse Studio takes out of his magic sack or something like that. But I'll give it this. At least it's not as insulting as Black Christmas. It goes a little bit on par to, the other one, which is, of course, Truth or Dare. But here's the thing. This movie is not exactly worth enough to fantasize. I do have my own fantasies, of course, and that is, I'm not gonna tell you.